I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped inside my apartment. Toby's leash was still hanging by the door, but the apartment was silent. Toby always ran to me. He tapped his paws on the hardwood floor like he was announcing, "Mom's home." But that evening in Columbus, Ohio, I heard nothing. No clicking paws. No tail hitting the wall. No soft whine of excitement. Just absence. And then the real blow. My mom didn't even greet me with a hello. She looked up from the couch and said, "We sold it. Your sister's kids needed new phones. You'll get over it." I heard the words before I even understood them. Sold it. Phones. But Toby wasn't an hit. He was my family. If you've ever had someone dismiss something you love like it's disposable, you know that feeling, like your chest caves in but your body keeps standing. And if you're watching this and you've ever been blindsided by the people who were supposed to protect you, stick with me. Because 2 days later, I made sure none of them would ever laugh at my pain again. And before we go deeper, if this kind of family betrayal hits you in the heart, let me know where you're watching from. It means more than you think. My mom smirked and said something even worse. I remember staring at her, waiting for her to say it was a joke. She didn't. My sister, Emily, walked into the kitchen with a soda and said, "Relax, Lily. He's just a dog. We needed upgrades." Then she laughed. That quiet, mocking laugh she used when she knew she hurt me and enjoyed that I couldn't do anything about it. I asked, "Where is he? Where is Toby?" And they laughed it off. Like they'd misplaced a throw pillow. Like my question was inconvenient. "Don't be dramatic," Mom said. "He went to a good home." My heart was pounding, but something else started rising under the panic, a slow burn. A simmering heat I hadn't felt in years. The kind that doesn't explode. It plans. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just said, "Tell me who you sold him to." They refused. So I walked out. Quietly. That kind of quiet that scares people more than shouting. Because what they didn't know was that Toby was microchipped, and I wasn't done. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something. Toby wasn't just a dog. He was the only steady part of my life for 5 years. I adopted him from a shelter in Cincinnati after the worst breakup of my life. My ex cheated, my friends scattered, and my family, well, they loved saying, "Told you so." But Toby? He curled up at my feet the night I brought him home and sighed like he'd been waiting for me. He saved me from drowning in loneliness. He made my tiny one-bedroom feel like a home. He was the reason I got out of bed some mornings. And my family knew that. They knew exactly what they were taking from me. See, in my family, Emily and her kids always came first. My mom once told me, "Children have real needs. You're just single." A quiet humiliation scene happened at Thanksgiving last year, one I never forgot. Emily had reserved the only comfy chair in the living room. I sat on a folding chair, holding my plate on my lap. My mom leaned down and whispered, "Maybe if you had children, you'd deserve a real seat." Little cuts. Little reminders of where I ranked. Always last. And Toby, he made all of it bearable. Which is exactly why selling him was the cruelest thing they could do. And they thought I would just accept it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the chipped coffee mug Toby once nudged off the counter. Every small memory hurt. By morning, anger had replaced heartbreak. I took Toby's adoption papers and vet records from my drawer. He had a microchip registered to me. I called the microchip company, trembling but focused. The woman on the phone told me something that made me grip the table. A vet scanned him yesterday. He was updated to a temporary address. A buyer paid cash. A buyer. Not a rescue. Not a friend. Not a good home. A cash buyer. And the vet had left notes. Toby had tried to pull toward the door. He looked distressed. He whined for me. My jaw clenched so hard I felt a headache bloom. She couldn't give me the address without proof of ownership, but I had that. 2 hours later, I had every document Toby ever touched in a folder. 20 minutes after that, I had the address. A suburban house in Upper Arlington. And the person who answered the door wasn't who I expected. A middle-aged man named Mark opened the door. He looked tired, the kind of tired you see in people who work too much for too little. When I said, "I'm here about a dog you bought recently," he froze. He stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind him, like he didn't want someone inside to hear. Then he said something I couldn't believe. "Ma'am, I don't want any trouble. I already returned him." Returned. Like a sweater. My throat tightened. To who? He looked ashamed. Your mother. I felt dizzy. He said my mom showed up that morning furious, saying I was unstable and had no right to Toby, and that he shouldn't have bought him. She refunded him the money and took Toby back. Except Toby wasn't at the house. And he sure wasn't with my mom when she told me he's gone. So where was he? I stepped closer. Please. Do you know where she took him? He shook his head. But I recorded your sister when she came yesterday. She was bragging. He pulled out his phone, searched a clip, and handed it to me. Emily's voice. Smug. Brutal. Mom said Lily cried for an hour. She's so dramatic. Anyway, we're flipping the dog again. That family offered even more. They sold him twice. And they were planning to sell him a third time. My hands shook so violently I had to hold his porch railing. Turning point line. That was the moment I stopped pleading and started planning. I drove to my mom's house shaking. Every mile felt like something inside me was tightening. When I walked in, the kids were on the couch, holding new phones. Brand new, shiny, expensive. Emily smirked at me. Look. Upgrades. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't accuse. I just looked at my mom and said, "Where is Toby?" She replied without even looking at me. Lily, stop obsessing. He's better off. And we already spent the money. On phones. On upgrades. On convenience. My voice cracked when I whispered, "He trusted you." Emily rolled her eyes. He's just a pet. And that was it. The deepest betrayal wasn't the sale. It was the way they made me feel stupid for loving him. I left without another word, because words weren't going to fix this. But documents might. Policies might. And the truth definitely would. Because when people commit a chain of small crimes, they forget one thing: paper trails exist. I spent the next 48 hours building the quietest, coldest revenge I have ever planned. Here's what I gathered. Microchip registration proving ownership. Sale recordings from Mark. Proof of a second sale. Texts from my sister about the flip. Toby's adoption contract, which stated he could never be rehomed without notifying the shelter. The shelter's policy, which treated illegal rehoming as grounds for recovery. Screenshots of my mother calling me unstable to manipulate the buyer. Records showing Toby needed consistent medication, which the new owners were never told about. Every piece was a domino. I took it all to the local shelter where I adopted Toby. The director, a woman named Carla, flipped through the documents with a tight jaw. "This is a mess," she said softly. "But he's yours." And they violated the adoption agreement. Her hand touched my arm. "We'll get him back. Legally. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just properly." We filed an official reclaim request, which allowed the shelter to intervene. Then we tracked the second sale, a family in Worthington. And when we reached them, Toby was there. Shaking. Thin. Confused. When he saw me, he whimpered so loudly the woman holding his leash gasped. She handed him over without argument, especially after seeing the shelter director and the paperwork. Toby buried his face in my jacket and wouldn't let go. My legs nearly gave out. But I wasn't done. "Oh, no. Because you don't take someone's family and laugh about it. Not without consequences. If you've ever reclaimed your power quietly, without shouting, without fighting, tell me in the comments. I want to know your story too." Now that Toby was safe, it was time to expose everything. My mom thought I was coming over to apologize. That's her pattern: hurt me, wait for me to cave, pretend nothing happened. But when I walked in with Toby on his leash and the shelter director behind me, her face drained of color. Emily's kids looked up from their phones with wide eyes. Emily just scoffed. "Oh, here we go. The dramatic return." I didn't even look at her. I placed a folder on the kitchen counter, thick with documents, and said, "This is everything you did." My voice didn't shake. Not one bit. Carla, the shelter director, spoke up. "Ma'am, selling an adopted dog without notifying the shelter is a violation of state policy and this contract. And selling him multiple times is considered fraudulent transfer of property." My mom's mouth fell open. Emily stepped back. The kids stared like they were watching a movie. I continued. "You sold my dog for phones. You lied to the buyer. You lied to me. You hid him. And you tried to flip him again." Emily snapped, "You can't prove." I slid Mark's recording across the table. Her own voice filled the room. "We're flipping the dog again." She went pale. Carla added that the shelter was filing an official complaint, and I was filing a small claims case for recovery costs and damages. My mom finally whispered, "Lilly, please. We didn't think." "No," I said. "You didn't care." Toby pressed his body against my leg like he understood. And the quiet humiliation they used to love giving me turned back on them. Because now they were the ones speechless. Small. Exposed. The fallout wasn't cinematic, it was administrative. And honestly, that was better. The shelter permanently banned my family from adopting any animal again. Small claims court ruled in my favor. They had to pay me back every cent they got from the sales, and then some. But the real consequence? Nobody, and I mean nobody, in our extended family looked at them the same after the truth came out. Not because of the legal part, but because they sold a family member for phones. I heard through a cousin that Emily cried when someone asked her at a barbecue, "So, how's the dog flipping business going?" People remember. And this was the kind of story that stuck. My mom tried to reach out. Texted things like, "We all make mistakes, and you know I love you." But love isn't something you say. It's something you do. And what they did was unforgivable. So I blocked them. Not out of anger, but out of peace. It's been 6 months. Toby's healthier now. He sleeps curled up at the foot of my bed, one paw touching my ankle like he's confirming I won't disappear again. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and just watch him breathe. I moved to a new apartment in Dublin, Ohio, one with sunlight across the living room floor that Toby loves to nap in. I haven't spoken to my family since the court ruling. And here's the truth. I didn't take them down. I didn't destroy their lives. I didn't humiliate them in public. I just held up a mirror. Everything else? They did to themselves. People think revenge is fire, anger, explosion. But sometimes revenge is a boundary so solid it becomes a wall. My family thought I'd break. Instead, I bent just long enough to gather every piece of proof I needed, and then I stood up straighter than they'd ever seen. Toby is home. Safe. Mine. And here's the lesson I learned. The people who laugh at your pain will always expect you to stay small. But the moment you stop asking for their kindness, you take back your power. If you've ever walked away from someone who didn't value you, I'm proud of you. And if this story resonated, subscribe for more. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if they sold your dog? Because trust me, your voice matters here.